Hello, grade 10 scholars. My name is Miss Novak, and we're about to launch into lesson 6 of week 2 online learning. So before we launch into today's lesson, I want to give us a really quick recap of what we can expect from these videos. Again, we went over this in yesterday's lesson. Also, you were familiar with this during week 1, so we're going to try to speed on through this, if you don't mind. Each video is going to be a bit different. Again, today we're going to continue on with the same anchor text, so we'll have that degree of familiarity. There's always going to be a list of resources and materials for the lesson. Hopefully you have your packets out and next to you at this time. We're going to go through a brief overview of the learning of the lesson so that nothing catches us off guard or by surprise. I'm going to model a particular lesson component so that you have an example moving forward before you complete your own work. I'm going to preview the next day's lesson and the learning target. Time for the fun ELA fact of the day. I was thinking about this lesson and what interesting ELA fact would pair well with it. I thought to myself, why don't I ask everyone, what do they think the most misused word in the English language is? Ta-da! The most misused word in the English language is actually ironic. Irony is often confused with sarcasm, coincidence, paradox, and oftentimes just bad luck, right? Let's take a look at these pictures at the bottom of the slide. This no chew spray that gets used for dogs to not chew on furniture, desks, I don't know, electronics, maybe shoes. It looks to me like a dog has chewed at the bottom part of that canister. I don't think a cat could do that. But in any case, that's ironic, right? Take a look at the other picture. We fit. I think that's a slogan for this trucking company. Well, apparently they didn't fit underneath that bridge. So think of it this way. When something is ironic, it means happening the opposite way of what's expected. And this often leads to some amusement. We're going to see this, and we have seen this happen in the story, The Necklace. Let's review some of the key resources and materials for this lesson. So this is lesson 6. We're going to be studying the same anchor text as we did yesterday. We need the text, The Necklace, that's in our packets, the note catcher, a pencil or pen, and a link to this video if you choose to watch it. Again, we're in day 2. Here's the title of today's video. We know that the expectations around day 2 are going to be to close read the text and to analyze a key detail. We're actually going to link this key detail back to the concept of irony. And again, we're staying with the same text, so we'll be pretty familiar with it from the end of this lesson. Let's move into our overview of learning. So for lesson 6, the target of the lesson is I can complete close read annotations to help analyze an author's choices on structuring a text by analyzing irony and its impact on the story. Again, our writing assignment is going to focus solely, right, on a key detail of the text and how it relates to irony. Let's move into the read, think, talk, write components of today's lesson. Wait, before we do, let's actually think back to yesterday's lesson, lesson number 5, and let's review our summaries of the story The Necklace before we really delve into close reading. If you'd like to take a minute and pause the video right here and review it, that's up to you. I'd like to give a really quick summary of the reading so that we have just a really firm grounding before we launch into our close reading. The story itself was about Matilda, right? She's the main character, and she was obsessed with luxury and high-class society, but she wasn't a part of it. So when her husband invites her to a ball, I think it was for the Ministry of Education, they decide to go. She's excited to mix and mingle, but at the same time, she doesn't have anything to wear. He gives her money to buy a dress, but she's still not happy. She goes to a friend to borrow some jewelry to complete her look. Well, they go to the ball, she's all dressed up, has a great time. When she comes back and she's changing and she goes to take off the necklace, ugh! she has lost the necklace. And this wasn't just any necklace. This was a necklace that was so expensive. Well, rather than approaching her friend and telling her, I lost this really expensive necklace of yours, she goes out and buys one just like it. The two of them. Her husband has to work 2 jobs. She has to work countless hours. They have to work 10 years to pay off the debt of the necklace. And so when she sees her friend 10 years later and she admits this to her friend says, wait a second, actually, the necklace wasn't a real necklace. It actually only cost me 500 francs or something like that. Wow, the twist at the end. So when we're rereading that small portion, right, of 119 to 129 that happens right at the end when this realization actually happens, we're going to be really picking apart those details to find out how it relates back to the concept of irony. Again, just those paragraphs. And we're going to make sure that we reference the fact that irony refers to some type of contradiction between appearances and reality, right? And we're really going to be focused on situational irony here. And inside of our note catchers, we're going to be answering that question. What did Matilda do when she realized she lost the necklace? And why did she act or react in the way that she did? Again, this is just you thinking about the situation, right, before we launch into our final writing effort. Let's review the talking and writing components of today's lesson. Again, reading the text independently is great, but when you talk about what you just read with someone else, it allows you to develop a deeper understanding of the text, and it also allows you the opportunity to engage with someone else's opinion of the text as well. So when you talk with someone else about the text that you just read, you're going to be discussing your annotations, and again, why this particular section of the text, paragraphs 119 to 129, is so important, and why really the messaging in it is so surprising. For your writing assignment, again, there's a space reserved on your note catcher for you to capture your writing. You're going to be lifting up a detail from the text and then exploring it. Again, so you're going to be answering questions about this particular detail, such as why did the author include this detail in the text? And in what ways does this detail contain irony or situational irony? Again, we're going to explore these concepts and review them in the next couple of slides so that you have a really firm understanding of how you can explore that in your writing. Again, this is the spot right here in your note catcher, selecting one detail from the text in paragraphs 119 to 129. And you're going to be responding to the following questions. Your closing today, once you've wrapped up all of your writing, once you've wrapped up your understanding of this particular section of the text, you're going to share your writing with someone. Super important. You're also going to remember to read a book for 20 minutes. Remember how I talked all about how nonfiction is actually, well, it helps increase your vocabulary, but sometimes reading a fictional tale or maybe science fiction actually increases your vocabulary as well. I'm going to be reading this book right over here, Dark Matter, for 20 minutes today. Hopefully, I'll find that time. And I suggest that you do the same. All right, as promised, let's review a little bit about what irony actually is. It's a storytelling tool, fundamentally, and it creates a contrast between how things seem to be and how they really are. There's 3 different types of irony: dramatic, situational, and verbal irony. It's really important to note that people often confuse irony with bad luck, right? And that's actually not it. It's really a little bit deeper than that. All right, let's have a little bit of an example here to explain this point. If you run to catch the bus and miss it by 2 seconds, that's not ironic, right? Unless You've been bragging all about how you're always on time and how you never miss the bus and you always wake up on time, you've never been late to a meeting, but you missed the bus that day after getting done with that bragging session, right? That adds a little bit of a comic contrast, and that would be considered ironic. Before we move on, let's review situational irony one more time. Sometimes the best way to review a concept is through an example. So situational irony is when the truth contradicts an expected outcome. Key emphasis on the phrase expected outcome. It's also referred to as the irony of events. Again, it's not the same as a coincidence or bad luck. For example, if I bought a brand new car, that's going to happen, but if I bought a brand new car and I happen to get into an accident on my way home from the dealership, some might call that ironic. Not quite, all right? But if I were a professional race car driver and I just attended a gala where I received a Best Driver award, and on my way home from that gala, as a professional driver, who just received an award for being the best driver, I get into a fender bender with someone, that would be considered situational irony. Again, looking at the ways that authors choose to use irony, because it is a literary tool that they use, we can ask ourselves, why did they choose to inject it in their writing? So how situational irony is used, often, especially in the case of realistic fiction, is to create a good old-fashioned twist at the end and to emphasize specific themes. So you see up here this fake versus real. Much like the case in the necklace, you really can't tell the difference between two pieces of jewelry unless you really, really look further. This one's a little bit more obvious, but as you can see, the back of one of the stones in one of the rings is clouded and the other one is see-through. So we know that they're not the same, but yet they look the same when worn, much like the necklace in the story. Let's move through a quick model. Again, we are close reading paragraphs 119 to 129, and our task as readers is to lift up one detail from these paragraphs and relate to our writing audience why we think the author decided to include that detail. And to take it a step further, we're going to state how that detail actually refers back to the concept of irony. So in my close reading, I decided to lift the line or the lines 123 to 124. I underlined those lines. I then asked myself the question, why would Matilda plunge herself and her husband into terrible poverty in order to pay for the loss of the necklace? So again, those lines are, and it took us 10 years to pay for it. 10 years of working double, triple jobs. Why did she do that? And I was asking myself, I was reading this, why would she tell Madame Forrester? She might have withheld this detail to save face. Did she? Wow. I just can't believe it that she actually made her husband suffer as well. And this all could have been avoided. What I can conclude here is that I believe the author included this detail in order to demonstrate the wealth disparity between Madame Forrester and Matilda. Her response seemed to trivialize that whole decade of their life that they spent trying to pay off the debt of this necklace. Maybe it was that she wanted to save face, but just think of what price tag that had to it, right? If she just had gone to her right from the start and said, I lost your necklace, she might have been able to avoid plunging herself even deeper into poverty, right? Just something to think about. Pretty ironic if you ask me. It's your turn now. Again, we are close reading paragraphs 119 to 129. You're selecting one detail from within these paragraphs, can be a couple of lines, might even be a paragraph. And I want you to follow the steps of close reading. I've explained them on the right-hand side of this slide. So annotation. Mark details in these paragraphs that cover Matilda and Madame Forrester's exchange about the necklace. Ask yourself questions while reading. Consider what these details might tell you. What can you infer from these details? And make a conclusion. Formulate conclusions about the importance of these details in the text. Why did the author choose to include a specific detail? And then get ready to write about it on your note catcher. Now that we've finished our writing assignment, let's preview the up-and-coming learning in lesson number 7. We can do this by reviewing the target. The target reads, I can identify key character traits and can explain their impact on the events in the story. We know the story pretty well at this point, so it should be really interesting to dive deep into character analysis. Remember, you're not in this alone, so if you have any questions, feel free to email your teacher for support. Again, the format is their first name dot their last name at detroitk12.org. Here's an example. Thank you so much for learning with me today. Again, my name is Miss Novak, and I'll be back tomorrow for lesson 8 for some intensive learning. Here's a couple of reminders for the end of today's lesson. Don't forget to talk about this lesson with someone. We just covered the concept of irony, so make sure that you reinforce that learning with a family member, caregiver, or friend. Remember to read for 20 minutes. I know that I am. And complete a reading log entry. Again, that's in the front portion of your packet. And practice your reading fluency. We'll revisit that a little bit more as we move on in our learning throughout this week. The directions are there for you to review as needed. Thanks again. These lessons, this PowerPoint, and this instructional delivery is provided by the Office of English Language Arts and Literacy. We look forward to working with you over the course of the next couple of days and weeks.